Good evening, Nightmare Roadshow crew. This is ISOS, and I'm here with my co-host tonight.
Dirty Birdie, how you doing, Colleen?
Oh my God, Bertie, it is so cold. That's why I'm still in my down jacket and I still have my cap on. I just came in from feeding all of the livestock, and I am frozen. It's so cold. We got
Yeah,
down to, I think it was minus 11 this morning.
yeah, it's going to get even colder tonight.
That's what they're saying, although the app said, well, that's what on one app it says we're going to get colder. On the other app, it says we're going to be a little warmer, but I don't think we're going to be any warmer. So,
No, we're at that time of year where it's going to start dropping
oh
until
God.
about mid-February. Then it's going to start warming up.
Yeah, even if it would just come up to above zero at night, that would be helpful. It's so bad out. It's so bad. So,
Yeah, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow and try to start my car, and I'm gonna hear it go. I don't wanna.
yeah, so it's been bad, but we are going to do a series coming at you guys, and this is the first of the series. And sorry, you're hearing my dogs eat and everybody's anyway. But we're going to start off the series that we're going to do on some problems around the country with funeral homes. And there's a lot of problems around the country with funeral homes, and we have one in our own town.
Yep, we
Yeah,
sure do.
it's really a bad situation. I have to preface all of this by saying allegedly, because he's not been convicted of anything. There are a lot of criminal and civil charges against this person, and we're going to get into them. So, so it's all allegedly, until if and when there's a conviction. So I understand there's a pre-trial conference, I think in April. There were so many charges that they couldn't have the trial when they first set the trial date, because there was just so many charges
Yeah,
coming in.
I
But,
I had no idea of
yeah,
how many charges he had, and you're like, no, look here's the stack
yeah,
of
it's
papers, and I'm like, a stack.
it's bananas. So what we're talking about is locally, it's the Downard Funeral Home, which is no longer in existence.
Nope.
Yeah, the building was completely leveled because of what happened there. Um, just horrific things happened there. So we're going to get into this. So I don't know how many people in our audience has had to go to a funeral home and deal with all of that after the death of a loved one. I've had to do it a couple of times. My mom and my dad, and it's the worst day of your life. You go in there and you're trusting these people with the body of your loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're relying on them to give you guidance through the process, to absolutely follow your loved one's wishes. Hopefully they've written them down and you know what they are, or at least follow your wishes if that hasn't happened, right? So you're relying on that, and you're relying on them to help you. And that certainly didn't happen in the case of the Downard Funeral Home.
Yeah,
And
that was just, I couldn't imagine.
yeah, I want to stop about talk about, sorry, my lips are still frozen. About who are funeral professionals, and what are their licensing requirements in the state of Idaho. I'm only talking about Idaho because as I go through some of these other funeral homes, I'm going to bring up those licensing requirements. But the point of talking about the license requirements is to point out that this isn't just somebody that walks in off the street and says, hey, I want to do this. They've gone to school for this.
Yeah, yeah.
There are really strict guidelines about education and training and apprenticeship and work to be in the funeral home business. And you have to obtain a mortician's license, and you need to complete and receive an associate's degree in the state of Idaho from a mortuary school that is accredited by the American Board of Funeral Service Education. So it's you have to have so many units in your degree that pertains to funeral home service. And you can have like a science degree and all liberal arts degrees and all these other degrees, but so many units has to be, I guess maybe, I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know exactly how many units you need. But so not only do you need an education, but you have to have practiced as a licensed resident trainee in the state of Idaho under supervision of a licensed mortician for not less than 12 months. And you have to embalmed during that time at least 25 bodies. And you have to have assisted in making at least 25 funeral arrangements. And you have had to conduct or assisted in conducting at least 25 funerals. So it's a thing. It takes time to get these credentials. It's not like you just wake up one day and think this is your calling and just knock on the door of a funeral home and do this. To
Yeah,
be
I had no idea.
Yeah. So okay, and then you have to actually get certified through the state. So you have to provide all of this stuff to the state as a resident trainee, and then and you can do it concurrent with your college. So you can be working at a funeral home and accruing all of this time and experience while you're going to college. You don't have to go to college first or last or whatever, but still there's an application. And then there's an examination that's conducted by the Board of Morticians. So it's a thing. And so let's talk a little bit about the history of Downard Funeral Home. In 1931, Byron and Mina Downard opened the funeral home, and it was opened right across from Pocatello High School on Grant Street, or Garfield Street.
Garfield.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was right there. Like when you were at the high school, you were right next door to the funeral home. And they had a crematorium there as well.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have a story for you later.
Oh boy. Well, the Idaho Division of Occupational and Professional License database, it shows, you can go into these databases and it shows all of the license or disciplinary actions of funeral homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the current owner of the funeral home, which no longer exists, is named Lance Peck. And he's been in disciplinary actions prior to the disaster that took place a few years ago. So between 2015 and 2018, he faced a lot of civil disciplinary actions. Okay.
Okay, I didn't know that. I know he got in trouble, big trouble for this one, but I found out that he got in big trouble earlier. So not only did it happen once, it happened twice.
Let's talk about him. So in 2012, there's the Downard Funeral Home and there's Portland Valley Cremation. So they owned Portland Valley Crematory was the crematory in the funeral home. So they have two different names, but everybody's associated with the same stuff. Okay. And so the troubles first began here in 2012 when a man donated his remains to the Idaho State University cadaver program. Now, Idaho State University in Pocatello has a medical degree program, right?
Yep.
And nursing and different degree programs. And so people donate their bodies to the university so that the medical students have cadavers to work on. It's incredibly necessary as a medical student to have a cadaver and not just a model. Okay. And so Lance Peck, who's the owner of the now defunct Downard Funeral Home, said he was out of town at another funeral home to pick up the man's remains, or was out of town and had another funeral home pick up the man's remains. So he didn't pick up the remains. He just sent somebody else, another funeral home, to pick up the remains. And somewhere in the process, he didn't receive in air quotes, proper documentation to donate the remains to ISU. Super duper necessary. I don't know how many people out there listening have gotten remains. I've transported remains in Texas with a friend of mine who actually transported remains from Amarillo to Childress and back and forth, like in these little communities to Amarillo. And you have to have paperwork to do this. And
Yeah, I imagine that. Yeah.
yeah, and even to fly remains that are ashes, you have to have paperwork to fly those ashes. I mean, there's a process here because yeah,
So
anyway.
they're like some kind of like chain of custody type deal going on.
Almost like it says human remains on the notification. It's like a manifest. Okay. And so anyway, you've got to have this thing. It's got to be certified, blah, blah, blah. They don't want people just stealing bodies. In other words, they want it tracked. They want all this stuff tracked. So
Who would want someone's ashes? I mean, okay, if they're famous, okay, maybe I can see that, but just some random person's
well,
ashes.
I took my mom on a road trip after she died and she was cremated. And because she never got to go on the road trip we'd always dreamed of, I took her remains with me and her ashes and sprinkled a little bit of ashes here and there. Right.
Okay.
And yeah, so I had the documentation with me the whole time in case I was stopped, just in case that you need it. Okay. Hey, you guys stop it. My dogs being dogs. Issues with the man's paperwork really got Downer Funeral Home into trouble. So in 2015, sanctions were filed by the Idaho Division of Occupational and Professional License. So the same document that issued the sanctions against Peck notes that in 2013, he let the funeral home's license expire and did not register it for a few months. But he was still taking in bodies and doing funerals and embalming and cremations.
Yeah, isn't that a big no-no?
Big no-no. So, however, it doesn't seem that big because in 2015 he was ordered to pay a $2,500 fine and $5,500 in investigative costs and attorney fees. He received 6 months of probation from the Division of Occupational and Professional Licenses. But that wasn't the end of the trouble. He's in trouble again in 2016. And it said that they operated again as an unlicensed funeral establishment. And he was again required to pay $2,500 fine and $5,000 in investigative costs. And he was given another 6 months probation. But this guy doesn't learn. He didn't learn. And the next year, Downard Funeral Home violated the same law and this time paid another $2,500 fine and $3,715 in investigative costs. And he was given yet another 6 months of probation. Now,
I would figure after the second time they'd be like, okay, no more. You're done.
yeah. Now we're on time number 3, right?
Somebody's got some pull somewhere and they're letting them get away with it.
Either that or nobody's really looking. They're just, this is the current case and time goes. Yeah, come on, guys. It's like all of this stuff could have been avoided if something more heavy-handed was handed to him, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's probably state, but if you got hit with something like federal, then you'd be like, okay.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if there is a federal fine with this stuff. It seems to be from all my research and all these funeral home issues, it's state by state by state.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. 2016, more problems. A woman dies. She requested her body be donated to ISU cadaver program. And when situations out of Downard's control prevented the funeral home from donating the body, and they cremated her instead. I'd like to know what that meant, out of control. Because you have one job. Take the body to ISU. That's your job.
Out of their control.
That's what it says. Out of their control. The woman's family learned of a program where ashes supposedly could be donated after the screw up. Okay. And they said, okay, we heard that you can donate these ashes to this place. So let's do that instead because they're, that's like your mom or your grandma's or your auntie's wishes, right? And so you're trying
Mhm.
to follow their wishes. And disciplinary documents showed that the family received 4 small vials of ashes, but no certificate from the funeral home that certified that the remains made it to the program where they asked the ashes to be sent. Again, paperwork. Hello.
It just sounds like spite to me right there.
I don't know. So investigators determined the program never received the ashes. And if they have, they would not have any use for the remains. So, in other words, there was no program to receive her ashes. They wouldn't have probably taken her ashes because they didn't need her ashes or want her ashes. Whatever, there was a mix up, something happened. Where her ashes went,
Nobody knows.
apparently. So it wasn't until November, not then, and in 2016, it wasn't known where her ashes went. And it wasn't until November 2017 that Peck reported finding the remains at the funeral home and he gave them to the family. So, in other words, oh, there's ashes. Look at that in the drawer, the filing cabinet. There's these ashes. They must be hers. And they gave them to the family. Can you
All
believe
right.
it?
Yeah, something more is going on here. I don't
Yeah.
know.
This gets weirder and weirder. That same year, so 2017, Peck faced more disciplinary actions. He got another $2,000 fine and thousands in investigative and attorney fees, and he was placed on a 2-year term of probation. They finally stepped it up. This is the 4th time now we've seen him get on probation. Now it's a 2-year probation. Okay, so it's said that at that point, he cleaned. There's no more problems until the big event that went down in Pocatello. Okay. So it did seem like everything was operating per permit requirements and licensing requirements until September of 2021, when, pardon it, but shit hit the fan in Pocatello. And I can't believe it. Like,
Oh
it
boy.
blew us all out of the water.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So here's what happens, right? Remember, this is right next to Pocatello High School. This is right next door. Like, there's a street in between the high school. Was it the gym and the funeral home? And kids
Uh,
walking back and forth and
yeah, it's
faculty?
so the funeral home would be here. You walk across the street, and there's the big glass doors that go to the auditorium right there.
Okay. Yeah, the gym, auditorium gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right. So you have hundreds of students every single day, hundreds of faculty every single day, all of everybody associated with the school every single day walking by this funeral home. And there was a Thursday in September 2021 that a passerby notices the stench of decay coming from the funeral home. That's not normal. I mean, they're
No.
dealing in dead bodies, but they need to be either cremated or embalmed or in cold storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what the hell's going on? And so they call the police and they're like, something's going on at Downard. So the police show up and it hit the paper. It went horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah. From what I heard, a guy was walking his dog, and he smelt the smell of decay,
Hmm.
and he poked his head. He walked up to the window because he could smell it. He could smell the decay, and he's trying to find out where it's from. And he gets to the basement and he looks in there, and there's just a cadaver on a table, cut up, just wide open and just rotting.
Yeah. So they get into the funeral home, the police do, and there's more than a dozen decomposing bodies were found in the funeral home, and the bodies of more than 25 others they found disappeared. So there's records of the funeral home receiving them.
But they're gone?
but they're gone. That's what I've read. Now, remember, this is allegedly,
Yes.
because
You
he
don't
has
have to do allegedly.
a lot of air quotes on allegedly because he has not actually been convicted. He, like I said, I think we'll go through where we're at with all of this stuff. But so on the law enforcement, oh, my cursor just went crazy. So the law enforcement arrives and they find all of this. And let me get back down to my, here we go. They start investigating and they put a notice up on the door that the funeral home is closed until further notice. Now, thankfully, we have two other funeral homes in the Pocatello and Chubbuck, which are sister cities, here, so that people weren't going, "Oh my gosh, now what do we do?" But I something to keep in mind is that, like, if you want to be cremated, you can buy that decades in advance. So you've
Mhm.
paid that money to Downard or wherever funeral home in advance to make sure that your wishes are, so they've collected money from people,
Right. And then
right? So you have all that.
after the business shut down and
Right.
got
So what
knocked down, hey,
what happens to
was it
that
any
money?
good? Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
so
any other funeral home be like, yeah, we'll
well,
take it because it's already paid for.
no,
But
no, no, no.
unfortunately, the money's gone.
The money's probably gone in this case because from all of the people that prepaid for
Hmm.
services, funerals, and everything else, because you can prepay all that so that your loved ones don't have to deal with it later. So that's kind of like, oh shit, now what? Right? Okay. So there's
Yeah,
that.
you're
Just
very
keep that
well.
in the back of your head.
It's
Okay.
like going. Yeah, it's like paying for. It's paying for. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
getting a ticket to a concert, and then the concert just ups and disappears, and you're like, great, now what?
Yeah. Well, okay. So you have this huge contingent of law enforcement, and they actually had to call in more investigators because it was so big. I mean, Pocatello is a small city. It's, 50,000 ish people. And then Chubbuck, I think, is about the same size, but they're not big cities here. And they're not used to doing something like this. This is kind of above and beyond what normally happens in a town. And you're like, oh my God. Okay. So, um, they do a search warrant. They're actively searching the premises, and they have the Bannock County Coroner Office, the Bannock County Prosecutor's Office. There's the Idaho Board of Occupational Licenses, Ada County, which is over that's Boise, right? That's our state capital, Ada.
Yeah,
Okay. Ada County's Coroner's Office and the Southeastern Idaho Public Health Department all at the scene, and news cameras everywhere. I mean, this is the biggest thing that's happened here like forever. So everybody's here. The Ada County Coroner's Office had to send a refrigerated truck to the funeral
yeah.
home
Oh,
to put the bodies in cold storage while this investigation was going on, because you've got decomposing bodies here.
yeah.
Okay.
Could you imagine getting that job? They're
Oh,
just like, hey, we want you to drive this cold storage truck to this place
well, as long as you only
and
had to
haul
drive it
these.
and leave, I mean,
Yeah,
but
well,
you have people in hazmat gear now. They had to be fully in hazmat and respirated to go into this building because it was so bad. I remember seeing that on the news, like the complete
yeah,
Tyvek suits and respirators, and they're going in. And um there was yeah, so this all went down like on a Friday morning, right? And then a couple related to one of the deceased persons within the building said that they had paid for the funeral, but then they couldn't reach Lance Peck or any of the staff. So they paid for a funeral. Grandma died or whatever. They pay for it, and then nobody answers their call, and they're like, "What we need? Where's our? We're gonna have our funeral. When's our?" I mean, there wasn't.
yep.
What the
It's
hell's going on? You know what I mean? It's like
it
bizarre.
it is that is so sketch.
Yeah.
I
So
think they're just taking the money, and then they're like, okay, what are we supposed to do with them? And they just like
allegedly,
allegedly, and it sounds
yeah,
like they're purposely. shuffling paperwork
Well,
around.
we'll get into that. So at that point, he was charged with 7 counts of grand theft by deception, 5 counts of
Mm,
furnishing false vital statistics information, because remember, all this paperwork's not jiving, and 4 counts of income tax evasion, 2 counts of
ooh,
offering false records, 2 counts of computer fraud, and 2 counts of perjury. At that point, okay? But then the
ah,
investigation continues, okay? In October, on October 11th, I think, is when they filed 22 felony charges against him, because the community was pretty outraged.
oh, they were
Okay.
pissed.
Really pissed, because they're like, wait a minute. How come this is only misdemeanor stuff? Why,
Yeah,
what's going on here? Because, and there's more to this. There's more to this. Okay. So they filed 22 additional felony charges against him on October 11th. And then it would be enjoined with 63 additional misdemeanor charges since he was arrested on October 30th of 2022. Because remember, he had not really been arrested yet during all of this investigation.
no,
So, and then new felony charges. There were new felony charges levied against him as well, and we'll go through some more of this. There are allegations that at least 25 families didn't either receive any cremated remains or receive the wrong remains.
yeah.
Okay. And one of our friends, who I won't name here, but he's involved with that, his grandfather, they don't know if they got his grandfather back.
Same
But
with one. Same with one of my friends. She's not sure she got her dad back.
yeah, so in that case, the police department had told our friend that you can pay, it's like upwards of $30,000 to have DNA done on the remains, but because they're burned at such a high temperature, there may not be any DNA to sequence. So you'll have to pay all that money and maybe not get any answers. So they decided not to do that. But you never know now. You're left going, I don't know if this is grandpa. This is disgusting. This is disgusting.
Yeah.
You don't treat people like this, okay?
Well, it's
Okay.
not only that. Not only are you scared you're not going to get Grandpa back, but you might get. You might not see Grandpa. He's not in the coffin.
Yeah.
You don't know where he went.
So here's where we get into some of the financial stuff that was going on. So while they were looking at all of these different charges, the Idaho State Tax Commission investigations was hot and heavy on this, right?
Oh, I'd
Because,
imagine.
yeah, because they released a report that said evidence will show that Peck willfully evaded taxes on his 2017 through 2020 income tax by not including Downard's income of $434,000 and change on the business income tax return. So on his individual income tax, he showed only $32,000 income, but the business had $434,000 worth of income. So where did the money go? And they never paid the taxes on it. They didn't report it. So they're investigating all of this stuff, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
they also showed that he evaded taxes on sales tax returns by not including the price increase of these taxable sales. So there was more taxes due. So there's 4 felony tax evasion charges against him, and in his operation of Downard. So now again, this is all allegedly, right? Because we don't have a conviction. But okay, there are 2 counts of computer fraud and 2 counts of offering false records, right? And so these were stemmed from the tax commission investigation because he filed these fraudulent income tax documents. This stuff always catches up, guys. If you're considering doing anything shady like this, you will be found out. It's not if, it's when.
Do not challenge the IRS. They will find out.
Yeah. There were 7 counts of grand theft by deception. related to his alleged misrepresentations to the local families about cremation services he charged for, but ultimately didn't provide because those were the decomposing bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he took the money, but then didn't do anything with the remains. And yeah, so let's see. There was another two families he charged over $1,000 each to cremate the bodies of their loved ones and provide them with their cremated remains. And so those are another two charges apparently. They never got their remains. So there's all of these people, these families being stacked up here as far as did I get the right remains back, or what happened to grandma because she's not, we never got her remains. So she's, was she one of those bodies? And then let's see. Ultimately, he was charged with 60 misdemeanor counts of unprofessional conduct by morticians, funeral directors or embalmers, 3 misdemeanor counts of petty theft. And after the search warrant at the funeral home, which led to the 12 bodies in various stages of decomposition, and there was approximately 50 fetuses in jars and dozens of unidentified cremated remains.
Mm-hmm.
What the actual
From what I
what? Like where? What?
from what I understood is that the storage lockers downstairs or whatever, they blew a fuse, and they were like, hey, we blew a fuse and you need to fix this. And he went,
Yeah, I don't know.
he just didn't
Here's the
care.
problem, though. The problem wasn't just the fact that these bodies were decomposing, but the records were all screwed up. Like nobody knows. He. I can see blowing a fuse. Then you get a
Yeah,
hold of other local funeral homes and say, "Oh my God, we need to move these bodies and keep them in cold storage till I can get this fixed." And in the meantime, your crematorium should be still operational, so you should still be
right.
processing remains.
But he just doesn't care. He's
Apparently.
he's doing, what is he? He's he's being way fraudulent. It's
Well,
like he did it once and got away with it. And he
well,
did it another time and got away with it. And then he got caught and then he got fined. But he kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it and just didn't care.
yeah,
Because
it blows my mind.
how do you explain $36,000 income, but your business is taking over over 400 grand a year? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why you incorporate so that you can keep your holdings separate and you show an income from the business, right? That I mean, there's a reason why. And then there's a reason why we have the tax code the way we do, but my God, I'm not so much concerned about the tax fraud because that's going to get them, but I'm concerned about okay, we have over 50 babies in jars.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the documentation on that and where did they come from? And we had those were fetuses, and then we had 12 bodies in various stages of decomp. So there's at least 15 families are suing him. Okay. And I think what happened was I was going back and looking through the Idaho repository to kind of try to figure out like these charges. And a lot of the charges it says were dropped and case closed, because then I think what they did was they joined it all together into one big lawsuit.
Oh
Like
yeah.
all these individual families got lawyers, or some of them the same lawyers, because it's a small community, so there's not that many lawyers, right? So but I think what happened was all the lawyers got together and they said, let's just do one big lawsuit. And so now
Yeah,
all
it's
the
probably
criminal
something like a
charges,
class action type deal.
I don't know if that's what it would be called, but they're going after him together. I think, yeah, it's so, and I misspoke. The pre-trial conference was set for this month. And when I did a search on the current happenings of the case, I didn't see anything. It does say that if he was to get sentenced at the maximum sentence for all of these charges, like if he was found guilty, it was like 320 years time or something. It was crazy. Yeah.
Jeez.
Like if he's found guilty and received the maximum sentence, he would be, yeah. So it does say that the business was previously, Downard Funeral Home, the business was previously in charge of donating cadavers to ISU, but the relationship ended last year. So this was
2023?
2023, I guess, after the university stopped receiving donations for a period of time. So they had ended the relationship with Downard for a while. So was he still telling people that he was going to be able to send their bodies to ISU and then didn't know what to do? There's so many questions here. And I wish this was a public trial. Like I wish they had cameras. Maybe Idaho or East Idaho News will go because this is a big story.
Oh yeah, it's a huge story.
So we need cameras in there. We need to be able to watch this because this is going to be unbelievable. I want to hear his explanation. I want to hear him tell the families why he thought what he did was cool. How do you
Money.
explain it?
Just money. That's all it is. It's money. You just
And just, you
take
don't
somebody
know,
and
like,
say,
did his business partners know what was going on? A lot of times you're just a partner in a business, but you don't really have anything to do with the operations. So you're trusting your partner to do what's right.
we'll never know.
Oh God. I'm sure all this stuff will come out in the trial. But anyway, this is an absolutely bonkers case. And like I said, it's all alleged because there are no convictions at this time. And the trial is set to happen sometime this year. So if they just had the pretrial conference, I don't know what that means for how many weeks or months it gets pushed out. But I bet that pretrial conference was a circus with all of
Oh
these
boy.
attorneys and families involved and everything. I
Yeah,
can't even imagine.
I don't know if we'll see this on trial like in 6 months or maybe a couple years. I mean, it's a
No, it
big
sounds to me
deal.
like it might go off this year because they delayed it in 2023.
I'm guessing sometime in the spring or summer.
It would be with this community needs resolution on this. This was a bad. This was bad. I can't even. So I did talk to a guy who was on the demolition crew for Downard. He came up and talked to me one day and told me of some of the horrors they saw. And it was, he said, we were basically told at that point just to fill in the hole
Yeah,
because there was just, they didn't even know what to do with everything.
yeah. I used to walk by there all the time on my afternoon walks, and yeah, I seen in the back saw a hearse or whatever, but I didn't actually go inside and go down because they're too dangerous. There was asphalt everywhere and pipes torn up, but
Oh, during demo, yeah. So, and then do you feel anything? Like I have sat out in front of it's now a parking lot, and um I've sat there on the street, but not in the parking lot, and like try to feel like what feeling is coming out of there, and I don't know if it's just my perception. I'm so angry at what he did to our families here, and so disgusted by what he did that I think I don't know that I'm picking up anything other than my own feelings of just being pissed, as my dad
yeah.
would say, pistivity, my own pistivity.
Well, you already prejudged the
Right.
area, so you're gonna get like how we say false readings. But yeah, when I was walking back by it and looking in the garage, I didn't get too close because you pop your head into an abandoned building, you can get hit with a good fine, and it's in a busy part of town.
Mhm.
Yeah, but even walking by there, it just felt off, like a
I
lot of
do remember driving
anger.
by it. with the police tape all around it because it just was mind blowing to me. You read about these things happening in other communities, and you never expect something like this to happen here. And, I mean, that's what everybody says. That stuff doesn't happen in our town, and yeah, it does.
Yeah, you got to say the magic words. You're like, nothing like that will ever happen in this town. And 2 weeks later, it'll happen. I
Yeah.
swear.
So we're going to keep you updated as this trial goes on. I want to keep you guys updated on this case because this is just bananas. I've read so much stuff on this case and it's just bananas. There were, East Idaho News and Idaho State Journal. They did a lot of reporting on this. Our local news stations, a lot of reporting on this. So a lot of this information is a compilation of all of their stuff, because it's, it hasn't gone to trial yet. So once it goes to trial and once there are verdicts, that will be, well, I'm going to try to get the court records because I want to read them.
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
I would pay money to see that live, and then all of us get together and have a watch party about this because it's a huge case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not that there's any glee on our part about what happened. We're so disgusted about what happened, and we're just so sad for the families involved because it hit close to home. It hit people that we know and we love, and this is not cool, man. So
yeah, we take no joy in this. We want to see justice done.
But we do want to see justice. Absolutely, I want to see justice on this. So it'll be interesting. And what kind of bothers me a little bit too is how, I mean, he's still in this community and his faith has rallied around him and all this stuff. I'm like, how can you, what? I mean, I understand being a forgiving person to a point. He still hurt. He hurt a lot of people here.
Yeah, if he does go to jail. Let's just say if he goes to jail, he'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we'll keep you updated as we find out more information on this, and we have more stories across the country of shady shit going on with our funeral homes, and I don't know what is going on. So, and I need to say that I used to inspect crematoriums. So I was a state inspector out in California for a number of years, and I've inspected everything from chrome plating facilities to crematoriums. And every crematorium that I inspected was on the up and up. I mean, they were polished operations. Their records were perfect. This is not normal, but there seems to be a rash of crap going on in this industry in the last 10 years. And I don't know if it's a lack of oversight from the regulatory agencies, because when I went in to inspect, I wanted the last 3 years of the records. And I looked like how many, because I know how long it takes to process a body. And I know at what temperature they also have to have their temperature, their smokestacks done in California, so they have to be show you a certificate of when they last had an inspection and a test on their burners. And they have to use odorizers in their stacks so that the community doesn't smell anything weird.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. That reminds me of the story when I worked at Pokey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to hear that one?
Yeah. Is this
It's
an
kind of gross.
allegedly again, or is this just
No. This happened.
Okay.
But it was about this time of year working at Pokey, and I was working in the auditorium department. And instead of taking the usual way, we took the Garfield side, and we're walking up to the steps to the auditorium, and it's something like 15 below zero outside. It's cold. And we have what you call inversion, which is there's a lot of cold air. And when hot air rises, it can't go anywhere. So guess where it goes? Straight to the ground. And Downers was cremating someone.
Oh.
And We're walking to the door. They started it up. It's coming out of the chimney, but it's not going up. It's going down. You can see it creep across the street. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I get a huge whiff of, let's just say, the worst barbecue I've ever smelt. And I could taste it for the next 2 days. It
Oh,
is that bad.
well, that's what I mean. That's so there's practices in place to prevent that from happening in your community, right? So, and I looked at all those records, and if I ever saw anything shady, and I had questions on one place that I inspected one time, and I talked to the licensing board out in California about it, and they looked into it as well. So after, based on my call, I was there from the air quality, side of things, and then they went in and looked at records after that. But like I said, other than that one time, I had a question on something because I thought maybe they were processing too many bodies at one time, and you're supposed to cremate one body at a time.
Yeah.
And when you have one crematorium, I know how many hours it takes based on body weight, right? And I kept looking at records going, how can this be? So I took photocopies of all their records, and then I had a discussion with the licensing board and had them look into things. So, but every other funeral home and I inspected probably 10 or 15 of them out in the Sacramento County. Um, they were they were everybody was above board. Everything was exactly the way it should be. So when this stuff, it kind of interests me because of my background as a state inspector on this kind of stuff. But then just from the sheer fact of the people that he's allegedly hurt.
Yeah.
So
I
anyway,
think it, it all boils down to money somehow. I really think it is. It's
you're
he
probably right.
he was in a financial pinch. He decided to cut some corners. He got away with it, so he did it again and again, and then he got popped the first time. But we got like 6 months probation. That's a slap on the wrist.
Three
Yep,
times. You got
and
6 months and then a 2 year.
that's why I said he knows somebody with some pull, or he's friends with somebody with some pull.
Either that or the licensing board just wasn't paying enough attention to
It could
the
be it could be a multi-factor of things, but
yeah,
he just kept doing it
yeah,
until that atom bomb went off.
yeah,
And then everybody was like, "Oh, now we'll pay attention."
yeah. Well, yeah, they kind of had to at that point. So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for listening, guys, and join us in. Like I said, this is the first part of a series that we're going to do on this stuff. And if you were affected at all by this tragedy in Pocatello, I am so sorry, and my heart goes out to you. I can't even imagine how you feel, and yeah, I hope that you receive justice. That's all for tonight.
Night, everybody.